welcome to my channel. My name is Karuna, and it's my hope that every time you come here, you feel warm and welcomed. Do you feel warm and welcomed? You do? Okay, the topic today is the guilt and sadness of going no contact or minimal contact with parents. This is heartbreaking for so many of us. My clients often speak of the waves of sadness or the waves of guilt that will wash over them. Some days will be an okay day, you're going along, doing well, and then the next day a malaise will set in. We'll consider the reasons for this sadness and guilt. The final portion of the video will talk about what we can do. The first thing I want to speak of is differentiation within the family. It is healthy to be in a family that is differentiated. There's loving autonomy in the family. Each member of the family will be recognized and honored for his or her own interests, his or her own talents and pursuits and views. Chances are those family members aren't going to be on this video. That's because when you're in a family that has loving autonomy, you kind of want to stay in contact. In many families, though, differentiation, the development of the individual self, was not encouraged. And in fact, the children were seen as an extension of the parents, and they were absorbed by the parents. Maybe you grew up in this type of family where there's heavy enmeshment. It gets very leaky. You don't learn where you begin, and you don't know where you end. Parents will be more interested in the child reflecting their values. The development of the child's self-identity may be seen as a threat to the parent. This drive to differentiate is a built-in calling. It's a built-in patterning. At a deep level, we know that we are free, sovereign beings. If differentiation is not encouraged in a family, some of the children will strike out on his or her own to try to develop their own identity. The child will establish strong likes or dislikes. A child may reject a parent's directive in order to follow his or her own internal patterning, his or her own internal call. Should the parents not be skilled at tuning in, the child may then be termed rebellious. In reality, the child is just trying to find his or her own way. The child is trying to differentiate within the family. By the time the child leaves the family, we'd hope that that child would have established his or her own identity. Yet many of us will leave the home and the same habits of the parents remain. The parents will continue to see the child as an extension of themselves. They'll continue to absorb the child, and the parents will also resist any further attempt for the adult child to strike out on his or her own. The decision to minimize contact or go no contact is not one we take lightly. We've probably tried just about everything. Skillful words, setting boundaries, rebellion, kind action. We've tried every possible approach that we can think of in order to enhance the relationship with the parents. Unfortunately, it wasn't good enough because the parents are more interested in controlling the adult child rather than truly meeting in relationship. And that's tragic because the parents are more interested in their sphere, in their bubble, than in really seeing the beauty of their own child. I'm focused on differentiation today because minimizing contact and going no contact is often the last resort toward differentiation. We tried and tried from the youngest of age, nothing worked, and now here we are at the place where we've gone minimal contact or no contact. So why the guilt? Why the sadness? We've gone in hopeful, so hopeful, but we've been met with the same disappointing result. Let's break this down. In a healthy family with loving autonomy, you're allowed to have differences of opinion, different skills, different views, but somehow you all meet in the middle and that common bond of love still shines. In a family where you're absorbed by your parents, differences of opinions and the setting of boundaries are not encouraged. In fact, they're often shamed. If we didn't develop a healthy track record toward our own feelings and toward the setting of boundaries when we were younger, doesn't it make sense that by the time we get to be an adult and we've gone minimal or no contact, that we would feel guilty. That skill set was never developed. It was never encouraged. It is partially the result of a very enmeshed family environment where we don't know where we begin and we don't know where we end. The parents liked it that way. Let's also take a look at the feeling of unrequited love. It's the most painful experience a human can have. You love someone so deeply, yet they do not have the ability or the interest or the understanding to reflect your inherent lovability back to you. Controlling parents can't do that. It's just not in their wheelhouse. So as a young one, we'll look toward the parents for love. They represent love to us. And as such, they also represent our own inherent lovability. When relationships in family of origin are transactional, the love in the family will fall short. We know there's a bigger expression of love than act this way and then I will love you. Fall in line with my values, then you're lovable. This leaves us surviving on that thread of hope I referred to earlier. How does this play into the guilt and the sadness of going no contact? Because we know the pain of unrequited love, and because we can identify with our parents and others, we have empathy, we can put ourselves in their shoes. I work with many clients who share, I feel so guilty leaving, or even with a romantic partner in trauma bonding. I feel so guilty for leaving. What they're really saying on many levels is, I don't want to play that role of someone who sparks unrequited love in another, whether it be a romantic partner or parents. Each of us are responsible for our own journey. Our parents, our siblings, romantic partners, friends. At some point, we will recognize that our inherent lovability will not be found through phenomenal events or through another person. It's at this important juncture that we then turn inward and ask questions such as, what is self? Am I aware? Those questions will take you everywhere. And when you understand the nature of your mind, you understand the nature of humanity. Full stop. We've just established that differentiation in a family is healthy. We also understand that the guilt that arises from going minimal contact or no contact is a symptom of an unhealthy environment. Because establishing boundaries, that skill wasn't developed when we were younger. In fact, it probably wasn't allowed. We've also just established that sometimes our empathy is not well placed. The empath will also deeply feel the pain of unrequited love, and we won't want to be generating that in our world, especially with parents who represent the pinnacle of love in many ways. Now we're going to shift into what can we do to alleviate this pain or guilt of going no contact. I just mentioned that the parents often represent the pinnacle of love. We're going to break that spell. Your parents are on a soul journey like the rest of us. They do not hold dominion over you. Level the playing field. They just happen to be a few years older than you. They're on a soul journey like everybody else. Breaking spells is super healthy. We're no longer enamored and we're no longer seeing things in a hopeful way. When you break the spell, you see the context of the situation. When we're no longer absorbed by the spell of the parent, it's a level playing field. We are sovereign individuals. Second aspect to consider is development of voice. You've probably minimized contact or gone no contact as that last step of differentiation. From here, practice taking your airline seat with your voice, with your communication. The more we communicate, whether it be in writing or voice, the more we feel comfortable expressing ourselves, that guilt will slowly start to lessen. This is your life. You have every right to be here. You have every right to breathe this air. You have every right to take your airline seat. Never apologize for your loving autonomy. Third thing I'll focus on today is really the heart of my approach on this channel. Many of us approach our day with the stories of the mind in the forefront. Our insecurities, our anger, our fear. These stories drive much of our experience in the waking state. But in the background, the intuitive wisdom calls us. On this channel, I invite us to start to flip that relationship. Bring your intuitive self, your intuitive knowing, to the foreground, to the front. And see if you can allow the stories of the mind to fade more to the background. Can you feel how there's more space, more room, more creativity and more empowerment. When we bring our intuitive wisdom to the foreground, that will start to inform some of the confused messages of the mind. There'll be greater ease. We'll also be clear that compassion is not saying yes over and over to parents. Sometimes we get that confused. There are times in life where we say no so that which is greater can grow. We say no so that a yes can take hold. This intuitive wisdom that you've brought to the foreground now informs every layer of life. The mental layer, the emotional well-being, the physical body. Your intuitive wisdom encompasses all the other layers and will inform all the other layers and will guide you in how to speak and act in your world. Many of us live in a fragmented way, and fragmented living begets fragmented living. When we turn right round and ask, what is the nearest and dearest to me? What is the nearest and dearest of my heart? We then access this great intuitive wisdom that's spoken about in so many traditions. And we become more interested in bringing that to our world rather than the stories of the mind, the hallucinations of the mind. When we are triggered and we go into anger and we go into the hallucination of the anger, we become less interested in the stories of the mind and more interested in that which we know we are at our essence. Within that intuitive wisdom, that essence, the residues and imprints of trauma will slowly start to settle and dissolve. And we're patient in a process such as this, where we may hold guilt at minimizing contact with a parent in order that we can follow this internal calling, follow this deep patterning that lives inside each of us. Let's just take a moment to notice what an amazing respite it is to bring our intuitive wisdom, our intuitive self, to the foreground. There really are no words. The recognition of self is the most profound experience a human can have. It takes us everywhere. In this recognition, we need never be convincing or patronizing. With each challenge we will ultimately face in a fragmented world, we do our best to bring loving intelligence to each moment. I have a dedicated online meditation program that helps stabilize our awareness. I put the link in the text below. If you have a topic you'd like me to cover, please put it in the comments section below. Thank you again for being here, and I will see you on the channel very soon.